Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and CPS issues. I'm your host, Marian Petrie, and today I have on my show is Danica Jones. She is a certified family mediator with the Florida Supreme Court, a Guardian Ad Litem, and an author of Florida's Family Stabilization Parent Education Curriculum, a personal custody coach, and founder of Kids Need Both Incorporated. She's devoted her life to guiding families through coaching, education, and resources to find workable, equitable solutions to their custody conflicts. This is very important. Her model includes educating professionals in the custody field, thus completing the circle of stakeholders who will be empowered to find the best solutions for everybody involved. She continues to seek opportunities to collaborate with organizations that will support her model and bring global healing to families, which is much needed. And her inspiration comes from real world experience in an isolating and abusive marriage. And she'll tell us more about that. But I'm just so glad to have Danica on. And I'm just so happy to have you on, Danica. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, glad to have you. We need to learn from you.
I will try. I'll do my best.
I think you'll be just fine. I saw you at the retreat over the weekend for the Resolution Center, and that was nice. And so, tell us about how you got involved into all of this Guardian Ad Litem, and how did you get sucked into all this?
How do I get sucked into it? I think I had no idea that I would end up doing this as a life mission, because it was sort of thrust upon me just in getting married too young, and having a family. And about 10 years in, I realized that this was not a healthy direction for the children to see the way things were. And basically, it's I got into a relationship with my husband. I think we both came from dysfunction, to be honest, but he did not have a good relationship with his mother. And therefore, when the newness wore off of him joining my family, he began to marginalize me from my family as well, like he did his own. And it became this, it just evolved into more of an isolating situation where I saw that the children, just for protection, I would put like filters on myself between him and me. So I was sort of almost like became emotionally unavailable to protect myself. But I also got that by being emotionally unavailable as a survival mechanism with my husband, the same thing would carry over with my children. Mm-hmm. And I was a stand that these children have a healthy upbringing. So I left thinking, no big deal. I've broken up with boyfriends in the past, no big deal. And then I realized, oh my gosh, about 6 months into me leaving the marriage is when he did the sucker punch of filing injunctions against me and trying to withhold the children and try to create this narrative in the community, not just with the children. Then we had 5, not just with the children, but in the school community and anybody it was obsessive. Mm-hmm. So I found myself in survival mode, and I was wondering why these children who previously had loved me and were always very respectful to me were being so belligerent and just vicious, like I was their enemy. And then that's when I discovered, this was 20 years ago, I discovered the word parental alienation. Mm-hmm. So I just became just a voracious reader of what is this? What's going on in my life with the kids. By doing that, it took me from getting out of the reaction of things and actually taking, I guess, thoughtful measures on dealing with the children to stay in their, keep a foot in their lives, in their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it, when you have children that are disrespectful and to you, you typically punish them
Mm-hmm.
for their behaviors. But if their behaviors they're really just the puppet of the parent who's bad mouthing and trying to get them to hate me, then that was for me to react by punishing them and all that with their behaviors was falling into the narrative that their dad was creating against me. So I was, and it just, over time, I realized all of this pain and suffering that I was going through, I couldn't be the only one. And I knew it took a lot for me to find the information I did back in, 2000, 2001. So from that point on, I'm like, how can I curate all of the resources I found and find even more for the next person to just, pay it forward. So then it became sort of just a passion of mine to make a difference with families. And I was like, okay, God, you gave me my life's mission. Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I'm really am grateful to make a difference in other people's lives. So I became a teacher in the schools and in the college system, and I started. I became a family mediator, and I wrote the curriculum for the state of Florida that's actually approved in 42 other states as well, for the family stabilization course. And that was just sort of a natural thing. Now, what I've created also is preparing people, trying to get people away from thinking that litigation is their only option.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that if I empower the parent to understand how things are to go and to heal themselves, then they don't necessarily have to resort to litigation as an answer. And sometimes you have to use litigation when you're dealing with a completely obsessed, alienating person who's bullying you and is not afraid of anything and just wants you to suffer. I get litigation may be a necessary evil, but most families, they don't really, like I've been mediating one set of co-parents, and they've been divorced, but things came up during the pandemic. And they came to me and they said, listen, and my attorney is asking me for $20,000 more to move forward. And there's still no guarantees that you're going to get what you want, get anything for that 20 grand. But they said, we're going to try mediation. And I have, worked several sessions with them, and, and we're coming up with some resolution. And, and that's the happy ending, because those children will be, are the big winners in this whole thing.
Danica, how long, when you meet with people, does it take to bring them to an understanding that, okay, we're mediating and we're going to agree to this?
It's different with each one, but I would say that if they're both willing to come and mediate, a lot of times you're not going to get it in one session, because the thing is they're already adversaries. They're coming to the mediation, and this isn't always the case, but they're coming to the mediation with two completely different views of things. So really using my skills in communicating with the parents, I get to hear their side, both sides, and then we work things out. It usually takes about 3 or 4 sessions to really get some completion over it. And you don't always get everything hammered out, but at least they start looking at each other as human beings
Mm-hmm.
instead of these evil enemies.
So what do you do with, like, say they're getting along? Do you ever have people come back to you and say, now this is not working?
Yes. Yeah. I've done several modifications. And the thing is as long as when they come to me, that's the goal. I mean, is to go through mediation,
Mm-hmm.
to not go through litigation and stuff like that, where because it's just so toxic.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed. The whole court is designed to be a winners and losers kind of situation where and it just yeah, like in family court you've got to you can't do this like winners and losers kind of situation, because when one parent is able to get victory over the other parent, where does that leave the child?
Mm-hmm. Have you found that, parents had been going co-parenting very well, and a third party has inserted themselves and created havoc, and then maybe one of them comes to you and then the other party won't come to you?
Mhm.
I don't know how often you deal with things like that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and that's in my co-parenting curriculum. It's called a happy child. uh, I definitely pick up on blended family situations, because
Mhm.
the predictability when the first, I guess the intact family, when it splits, the predictability that one or both are going to go into another relationship, and possibly a relationship where there's stepchildren involved, is pretty high.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the reasons that the uh, the second divorce, or the second marriage and the third marriage and on actually has less chance of surviving than the initial marriage
Mhm.
is because of the blended family dynamics that are going on. People try to make that, that second marriage, um, it's a totally different animal than the
Mhm.
original marriage, when you're dealing with those family dynamics and stuff like that. So I always try to put a component of blended family dynamics, because you might have that new love interest coming in that's insecure or jealous or threatened or whatever, that can actually cause alienation that where it didn't exist before.
Mhm. Have you ever had to recommend like a forensic psychological evaluation on some people?
I haven't, because that's not my role.
Okay.
But however, um, and to be honest, I try to, by the time it gets to the level of a forensic psychology recommendation, it is so toxic, so far gone. It might be years into this whole battle, and they're thinking that's the magic bullet that's going to solve everything.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it doesn't help, it doesn't hurt or help. I know in my own personal situation, I actually had two psychological evaluations of the family. The first was put on by the Department of Children and Families in Florida, and the second one we brought in as a private forensic psychologist.
Mhm.
And it was quite interesting that if and I was shocked that the mental health profession was not aware of, and many of them don't know how to identify parental alienation.
Mhm.
Um, and in my situation, the first one that, spent 15 minutes with me, and he was just at the directive of an open dependency case against me. He just spent 15 minutes with me. And then he's like, yep, basically, mom's crazy, kids go with dad. And
Mhm.
then the second evaluation, it was several weeks of intense interviewing and testing of each member of the family. So it was super extensive. And I always tell people, I said, don't think that you're going to get what get
Mhm.
what you want in a psychological evaluation, a court case, hiring that amazing, expensive lawyer to get what you want.
Mhm.
Don't expect that. They're not going to even make promises that they'll get you what you want. But they will sure ask you for a huge retainer to
Mhm.
even touch that case. And I always say that if you're not working on the relation, because the relationship is ultimately the prize that you're going after, is maintaining that the eternal unity of the bond you have with your children. If you're not working on that, and you're just going all about warfare in the courts,
Mhm. Mhm.
you're even if you win, you're winning the booby prize. You're not really winning the real sought after prize, which is the relationship with the children. So, and I found myself in the end of a 5-year battle actually being offered sole custody.
Mhm.
And it was a really hard thing because I'm like, wow, I can claim victory and stuff like that. But I was like, but what am I a stand for? I'm a stand that these children grow up whole and complete. And the only way that they are going to, they really need a loving relationship with both parents, totally get, all that they went through, but they still needed to know the good and the bad
Mhm.
of both of their parents, because the parents are part of who they are.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we learn as children. Think about it, when you become in your 20s or 30s or whatever, and you're starting your family, you're thinking, what did my parents do that I liked, that I want to implement in my family? And
Mhm.
what are the things that I didn't like, that I don't want to continue to repeat the patterns of? So just because you're exposed to, maybe your ex has a certain personality trait or whatever that you find at that point despicable,
Mhm.
don't think that cutting them out of their life, will prevent the child from repeating it. In fact, they really got to see for themselves, so they get to make their own decisions.
What do you do with these parents that come to you and say, "Well, I was co-parenting, but now he or she has blocked me from I have no way to contact the ex." And what do you do? I mean, what do you do with that?
So, okay, so what you're asking me is, when they can't contact the co-parent or the
Mhm.
children,
Both. How about
both.
both?
that is that's a tough thing. I'm not against utilizing the court system, you know to defend, to move things along, and to exercise your rights.
Mhm.
um, I'm just saying that you also have to do other strategies. So
Mhm.
there might be a situation where you have to say, to document that you've had your visitation withheld, and that might include your FaceTime visits and stuff like that. Like, it's super important to document it, um, for court purposes, but you need to look at every other way that you can be involved in your child's life. Like, if they're in school, then you have rights. I think most of us have rights to say, I need to know what my kid's school schedule is. I want to be able to talk to the teachers. I want to
Mhm.
be able to have some input. I want to go to their games and stuff. And just when I was going through all that I was going through, for a while there, I was non-residential.
Mhm.
So I was definitely in that situation. Well, how do I show my kids that I care
Mhm.
when it's not my time? Um, and I went there to visit for lunch, and I went to their ball games and sat in the audience. Went to teacher meetings. Trust me, that was the last place I wanted to be,
Mhm.
because it was so heartbreaking to see my children, across the room, and them being by their father, not feeling comfortable to come in over to me and say hi. Plus, they knew that there was all this bad mouthing going on in the school
Mm-hmm.
against me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they saw me there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only reason I would go, is just so they could see that I cared enough to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it unraveled the narrative that they were being told that I don't care.
That's very true. That's very true. What do you think of these school systems that I think are furthering this alienation? I mean, once the custodial parent waltzes in there with a court document and talks to the principal and gives him whatever line he wants to give them about you, and of course it's you're mentally ill. And
Mm-hmm.
when you want to come into the office and talk, they treat you they really shabbily, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. They
Um,
do.
it's like I still don't know, and even, my children have aged out. I look back and it's like I don't know how I would even handle that. I mean, I've had a superintendent lie to me. I bet I've been lied to by the principal, the superintendent. It's like, what rights does a non-custodial parent even have, which is nothing?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like that, but I think in many of the states, things are changing. Certain school districts where now they have these parent portals that you can log in with your own login information to find out about your child's grades, their attendance, even their assignments and stuff like that. And I would say get proficient on being able to utilize that. Also, you've got to be really careful about um, reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Going in, just assume. I mean, even if you know in your head you've got evidence to prove that the principal or the teacher is siding with your ex, you have to go in even like pretending, like not acknowledging that,
Mm-hmm.
and just really saying, being this Susie Sunshine, I call it. I
Mm-hmm.
was
Right.
just Susie Sunshine. I'm just going to take the approach that, we're on the same team, working for the best interest of the child and stuff like that. Because over time, it's the narrative that they've been taught to believe becomes incongruent with the
Mm-hmm.
person you show up yourself up to be. And if you come in demanding your rights,
Mm-hmm.
you're just getting sucked into the narrative that they've
Mm-hmm.
been told. Um, so it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I would say that what would help is, I always tell people, get yourself a divorce coach, custody coach, whatever kind of, life coach that you can, and because get them before you hire an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they're going to help ground you in not reacting and badly and shooting yourself in the foot and stuff like that. Like, they're going to get you to determine what's no big deal, and you just need to just like push it aside, and what things do you really need to go after, and how.
Mm-hmm.
They're like your strategic partner. And they're also, a coach is one that's going to tell you, just like an athletic coach, they're going to be tough on you. They're going to tell you when your thinking is not very good,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know to for you to, and you guys are both on the same mission, which is, hopefully your coach is all about the best interest of, the child, outcomes for the child. And so I've coached several people going into mediation. So sometimes I wasn't hired for the mediation, but I had someone, who was referred to me, and I would spend several sessions preparing them for mediation.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that was the same thing, grounding them and being a sounding board, and letting them see what they didn't necessarily see. I Because when you go into a mediation, for instance, you're setting the course for how everything is going to go for the next 20 years as co-parents. And, you know, you might be making a plan that works great for your 2-year-old, but it's not going to work when they turn 17. So it's really getting, that's kind of what the role of a coach is, to see what's blind to you and keep you grounded and keep you out of that what if world, because the what if world, the fear-based world, can have you making a lot of decisions that you'll regret.
Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of parents going through this, I mean, they're thinking farther ahead than they need to, like what's going to happen next. And I'm sure you see that as well. And I'm sure you have to maybe slow them down and say,
Mhm.
live in the present.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, it's really just getting a good handle on your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
because when you think about it, when you're in emotional state, you're in a survival state, you're letting that primitive brain run the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not really thinking at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which leads to people making poor decisions, or perhaps saying the wrong thing to their own child. And I mean, people tell you, well, I said this over the weekend, now I'm sorry I said it. And I mean, I'm sure you offer ways on how to correct what they just said to the child. I'm sure
Mhm.
it's like a big ball of wax it's just very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, you know, I would say, and this is what I tell people, is maybe when when things didn't work, the relationship didn't work out, and you truly feel like you're being victimized by a vengeful ex who's obsessed to destroy you at all cost. I mean, that was definitely my experience. But
Mm-hmm.
then over time, I realized I was healing. Both of us needed healing. We just reacted differently in the way that I was definitely the victim, you know, and I had to build myself up and get myself strong so that I no longer was the victim anymore of this. And for him, I know I also now see him as he was a product of his childhood, and that was his go-to, just like an injured animal that goes after you and attacks you, and they're injured,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's their only way of that they know what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say, you both need you need help. You can't just because here's what the almost certain future is, if you don't get healing, and that might be through a facilitated coaching group or counseling or self-development of some sort that makes you stronger, then the predictability is when that relationship doesn't work out, you go into another one. And since you're the same person, you're going to attract a similar dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe they're not physically violent, but they're you mentally.
Mm-hmm.
It just comes in a different flavor of the same person over
Mm-hmm.
and over again until you heal yourself
Mm-hmm.
and make yourself strong. And in relationship with the kids, they need authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
They need, if you made a mistake, if you said something, if you badmouthed you were so frustrated with the way that they were treating you when they came over to you for a visit that you just couldn't contain yourself and you say something horrible about their other parent, then apologize for that. Admit when you know, made a human error,
Mm-hmm.
because we all do it, especially under pressure.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you've got these outbursts at times, and some of these kids will just completely hold it against you forever. Um, it's like when I was going through a divorce, I never knew that there were divorce coaches. Like we were working with attorneys, and I don't know if you even call that mediation, but they sentenced us to go to co-parent counseling. And that was helpful, but but the other party just didn't want to do it anymore. Like we went through, I don't know how many sessions, and then he just got up and said, "I'm not doing this anymore," and he walked out. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, and I used to always say, I mean, it does not take the willingness from both sides to shift, to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
It takes one person committed to the end result. Like, I was committed that my children would not have to choose who to have Thanksgiving dinner with.
Mm-hmm.
I was, and it took a village to help me to even get to that point, because when when you feel like you've been so attacked for so many years, there's no happy thoughts about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So over time, we were like, I uncomfortably invited him to a blended family gathering and stuff like that, and he accepted, and I had remarried as well, and my second husband was definitely he was willing to be part of the healing process too, and was a stand that the children are allowed to invite their dad to family gatherings. And it was just the exposure
Mm-hmm.
that gets the kinks out. It gets the
Mm-hmm.
stiffness out, is just being exposed to each other, and then your guard sort of goes down and stuff like that. But yeah, like I wanted and so we had several years of family gatherings where I had husband and ex-husband in the same spot, and it was not, I not to put myself on some pedestal, but the fact is somebody has to extend the olive branch.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has to be the better person. Somebody has to be the example to the children of, this is how I want you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing to do with them contributing to it as well. The other side contributing, because eventually the children naturally go for positive people. They
Mm-hmm.
get, I think, not just children, like humans.
Mm-hmm.
We see all of this horrible stuff on TV and stuff, and you get to the point where you have this threshold of negativity. I can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the children will say, well, when I'm with my dad's, I feel like this, and when I'm with them, when I'm at my mom's, I feel like this. And then they love both parents, but they'll end up managing the difficult parent, sort of feeling obligated, kind of codependent or whatever, to that particular parent, and stuff. And then they have this free relationship with a parent who is like, doesn't take offense when with just lets things roll off their back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I was all about with holidays like Mother's Day and their birthdays and stuff like that. Like I was okay that they knew that it was important that for their dad to have Father's Day or the birthday or Christmas Day. And I was like, that's fine. We can have an amazing celebration. It doesn't have to be on the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave them freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't really chosen over. You were actually the one that gave them freedom.
Right. I mean, I always thought it was a good idea if whenever the birthday fell on, if he had them, he had them. But then I would maybe celebrate their birthday, say on a Thursday. I said that way we're dragging out your birthday for a whole week.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a big party all week, and you have to go with the flow and let your child or young adult or tween make decisions. even if they may, hurt you inside. It's like, well, this is bothering me, but they've got to make their own decisions, and I can't interfere. And that's part of the process.
Yes. And a lot of times parents will take it personally when a child evolves. There's a reason why children are broken into elementary, middle school, and high school, because there's developmental shifts that happen. So in their elementary years, their whole world is revolved around their family.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't even really think about doing it any other way than being with their family and stuff like that. But then you hit middle school, and that's why sometimes the middle school years are kind of rough. Is they're
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a minute, my friend Joey, his family goes out to the pizza place every Friday night, and we don't do that. How come we don't do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, they get completely oblivious to their family,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all about their friends. So they really don't want to spend time with either parent. They want to be
Mm-hmm.
with their friends.
Right.
So we take it personally as parents,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we're not in an equally shared co-parenting situation.
Mm-hmm.
When because my second husband, he had that typical non-residential every other weekend kind of visits and stuff like that. And as his children got older, they're like, well, our home, for one thing, they didn't identify his home as their home,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the place they visit. And you may have had a bedroom that you tried to put all their stuff in, but they didn't own it. It wasn't theirs. So they'd say, I really want to be at my house. My friends are living in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And then you get, as a non-residential, you just really get, you get hurt, and you take it personally. And then if you have a bad relationship with your co-parent, the co-parent is conspiring. They are doing something to try to destroy. Like that's what it is. But as 50-50, especially if it's like a 7-day 50-50, I just found, for one thing, I was able to be much more financially stable.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just be fully myself, like 100% devoted to them for that 7 days. I get to take them to school and have family time, and they got their home, they got their own space, and they had their own friends at my house.
Mm-hmm.
And then passed it off to to dad on his week. And that meant I got to pick up extra, like a second job so I actually was much more prosperous.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had adult time,
Mm-hmm.
for myself, that because I'm not being mom for a
Mm-hmm.
week. So, and then when they age out,
Mm-hmm.
then it's not such a shocker that the kids are gone, because you're used to them being gone every other week. And when they start branching off in high school and wanting to be around their friends more and with their parents less, you get it, that it's the child evolving. It's not the co-parent sabotaging.
Right. And when I had my kids every other weekend, and if they wanted to have their friends come over and sleep over and, whatever. I mean, the one time I had like 8 of them, all of it in the house. And it was fun. I mean, even though it's like, I know they're there, they're with their friends, and, I'd have pizza for them. I'd have donuts in the morning. I would even wait on them hand and foot. But I mean, I found it was fun. And then after the friends left, like around 10 a.m., and then we'd just settle down and maybe just watch a movie together before I had to take them back to their fathers. So, it's just a matter of staying positive at all times for these kids.
Yeah. And being non-residential for a time, it was heartbreaking. I so internalized it, and I took it personally.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my ex at that time, because we were in this warfare, was feeding the narrative to his community that he had primary because there was something wrong with me.
Mm.
And for me, I felt like I was wearing a scarlet letter because I was like people are going to think there's something wrong with me because I only get them like every other weekend. And when I did get them, they were so keyed up to be so mean and stuff that it was survival on those weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I mean, I guess that's also part of that personal development that you have to do for yourself. You have to nourish yourself as an individual, because you don't get to be that parent, um, you know, for your whole life anyway. You've got
Mm-hmm.
to have your own individual identity that you've built up and nourished anyway.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Um, uh, is there anything you'd like to add, or how can parents reach you if they have any questions for you?
Well, I've got a couple of things going on. The primary website of my nonprofit is called kidsneedboth.org. But I'm also creating and of course, I've also created a platform community called Hope for Families, Hope, the number 4, families.net. And uh, the goal is for it to be, is to bring together these professionals who are dealing with family stabilization issues and parental alienation, and to be able to cause the effectiveness of these professionals, because there's so many professionals out there that their heart is to help these families. And unfortunately, there are some professionals out there that are that don't have an answer, so they just kick the can along the road and
Mm-hmm.
they take advantage of it financially.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to provide these vetted services, or a directory of professionals that are there for the right reasons, that are in alignment with our mission and vision at Kids Need Both. And to get these professionals, if they have courses that they want to provide on the platform, they have courses. We have facilitated groups. It's in the pre-launch phase, but we actually sort of announced it on the Parental Alienation Awareness Day panel discussion that we had on April 25th. So we're getting there. We're quickly trying to fill it in with all the events that are happening across the planet, because when we do, and we're doing monthly panel discussions through hopeforfamilies.net with professionals, and we've had participation from Australia all the way to the UK on these panels and stuff like that. So it's super exciting, and we realize it's a global.
Mm-hmm.
It impacts people globally.
Yeah, this has been a global issue for a long, long time, and everyone's trying to figure it out and get it sorted out, so the future generations are not going to pay for this later.
And they will. I mean, we
Yes.
have a tendency to repeat the things that are familiar with us, even if we know it's not even a healthy pattern.
Mm-hmm.
We just subconsciously repeat the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to break that up.
Right. Well, I'm so glad I had you on. I don't want to keep you from your other appointments, so I'm so glad we had this talk.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. And it's nice to know another person, another advocate in the world that's doing good things for families. I've seen so many changes over the course of the 20 years. I've seen 20 years ago, when I'm looking in this was the rudimentary internet, trying to find help, and I found a book. My very first book that made a difference was Richard Warshak wrote a book called Divorce Poison.
Mm-hmm.
And it became my survival field guide for dealing with my kids. And that was all I had available to me, and until I found more and more people who got it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, to find more people, and advocacy somehow chooses you, whether you like it or not.
I like that. Yes, it did. It found me, and I yeah, had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, but
Now you know.
now I know. And and I would say, if I had any kind of advice I give to a parent is be careful to not to not only just document all the things that happen in the course of your co-parenting, which you're basically focusing all the wrong things that happen.
Mhm.
Document the things you need to celebrate, the good
Mhm.
things that happen with your children and with your co-parent. Think about what went right, because if you focus on what went right, I guarantee you that will expand.
Mhm.
Um, and that also includes like dealing with your family, dealing on these social media groups and stuff like that. Don't be part of that weighty,
Mhm.
like vomit session.
Mhm.
Really get into like, it is not healthy for me to just commiserate
Mhm.
um, on what's not working.
Right. Yeah, you have to find the groups that are perhaps searching for solutions. Anyone
Mhm.
have ideas? Positive groups. I mean, there are some of these groups that, like you said, that just brings these parents down, and they need to be lifted up during this time.
That's right. And they need to stop. Um, I get when I was in the middle of it, um, I felt so victimized, and I felt like, well, I'm a good person, and why am, in this, and I didn't see where I needed to be healed.
Mhm.
And I would say that if you're going through this and your heart is breaking, there's something inside of you that needs to be healed.
Mhm.
And so to seek that healing, because
Mhm.
it will make you stronger and you'll no longer get triggered by the little things.
Right. And there's no shame in seeing a counselor or
Mhm.
even a psychiatrist. I mean, anything that can help you make the
Mhm.
situation better,
That's right.
you know. Um,
It's better than, I know that historically people who are going through divorce, because it is death and divorce is the top two things that are traumatic in a person's life. uh, that's why you see substance abuse
mhm.
go up, because it's a dealing mechanism, it's a
Mhm.
coping mechanism, that if I can just dull the pain.
Mhm.
And sadly, people use that, co-parents will use that as a weapon. Oh,
Mhm.
they're a drunk, they're on drugs, they're
Mhm.
this and that. um and you know anyways, so yeah, a lot of people will deal with it. Doesn't make them a bad person because they started drinking a glass of wine every night.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it needs to be an indicator that, wait a minute, I'm coping with this,
Mhm.
and that means I need healing.
Mhm. I'm just so glad I had you on for this
Mhm.
talk. I hope, this, reaches
Yeah.
people and helps educate and have people learn from you. And so,
Mhm.
thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me. I'm always open you know, to spread the light any way I can.
I'd like to have you back on sometime too in the future.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again with Danica and other guests in the future. So thank you again, Danica.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.